This book. This book is trash. This book sucks. I absolutely hated this book. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm just kidding. Hello. So this is my spoiler review, in-depth, quote-unquote discussion of The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I know many people love this book. I just want to say all of this, of course, is my own humble opinion. Also, I want you to know that this is the first adult fantasy book that I've actually read. Before, it was always nonfiction. So, yeah. Also, the way I found this book or came across the Kingkiller Chronicles was through a Reddit thread. I was just getting into Jungian psychology and like MBTIs and things of that nature, and I was kind of reading some of his works. I read about shadow work and things like that, just psychology overall, Jungian psychology. I researched a fantasy novel. I wanted to find a fantasy book or series that focused on an INFJ protagonist. I came across a Reddit thread where it was recommended to read the Kingkiller Chronicles, that he was more of an ENFP, and I know that was just another sensitive, intuitive type, so, I said, Kingkiller Chronicles sounds super cool, like let's do it, let's get into it, let's give it a shot, and here we are. I'm gonna go ahead and set this up here so I don't have to hold it. So starting with what I liked, world building. Right off the top, world building was phenomenal. It was very immersive. The accents, the different languages, the music incorporation, amazing. The different characters definitely brought a whimsical vibe to the world as well. As dark as some of the themes and events that happened throughout were, I always felt this whimsical vibe to this world. I don't know if that was just me, but I really enjoyed the world building in this book. It was done really well. Speaking of whimsical characters, or just my favorite characters in general, Ari was really cool. I loved their dynamic of anytime Quoth showed up to meet her on the roof, she always asked, "What did you bring me?" And she had a gift for him as well. And it was always something like a ring of secrets, or a ring that holds secrets, or Quoth gave her a bottle of wine that held, I believe, sunlight or moonlight, and at the bottom of it were questions. That's just one example. Every time they meet up, it's something like this, and I loved it every time. And she really gave a solid whimsical vibe to the book as well, and she's one of my favorite, most interesting characters, who also lives in the Under thing, which was really cool as well. Master Eladin is my favorite character, hands down. He was really cool. I loved his kind of boyish attitude or sense of humor towards things on the surface, but he had like a deep wisdom inside him beneath all that. Him being the master of names, which I'll speak about the magic system here coming up, but Master Eladin, amazing. And he played a big role in my favorite scene or my favorite chapter as well. So yeah, those are my two favorite characters overall. I also like the fact that there were 8 masters, all of them with distinct personalities. And these masters are, of course, the characters at the university. They're the masters or the teachers at the university that Quoth gets into. And I love their different personalities. They were all unique. Master Lauren was probably a first favorite. Not really a favorite. He was one of the most distinct ones in my opinion, because he just never had an expression. He was always just expressionless, and just hearing him speak or reading his dialogue, it's just, I could play it out in my mind, him just straight as faced you've ever seen, no matter what he was saying. So that was enjoyable. I enjoyed the scenes with Devi, who would loan Quoth the talents or the money he needed to get admitted into school or pay for lodging or whatever it was he needed money for. She was a unique little character as well. There wasn't too much depth with her, but I liked her vibe as well, her nature, right? The surprise of him going into a bank or somewhere that you would expect to see like almost like a thug kind of person or bookie type of guy or something like this. I don't know, but instead it was Devi, who's described as kind of an impish, shorter female character, and she also gave me whimsical vibes too. So I liked her as a character anytime he visited her. I also liked Quoth's friends and their dynamic, Willem and Simon. Anytime the three of them were together, it was humor beats. I enjoyed the humor. Some moments that made me smile for sure. Other moments that are in the book that I'll probably speak on had me laughing out loud while at work. But yeah, I loved their dynamic as well, the two friends that he had. And where present day Quoth is in his inn, telling the story of everything that's happening in this book, there's Bast, who is his pupil or student and also employee. And I like Bast. Bast is he's very caring. He's a very loyal companion. I'm looking forward to learning more about what he is. I think he's Fae or part Fae or something. There was a moment where he it seemed like he was going to transform or something or something was going to come out that was subdued by Chronicler. So that's very interesting with his character as well. I liked the magic system. I like sympathy. I love that it required you to be very intelligent. It required you to know what you're doing, down to the like elements that you're dealing with and things of that nature. You have to think through like, okay, what do I have on me? The many moments Ko thought, what do I have? I have this string, I have a copper, whatever. It's just it feels very scientific the way sympathy works, but yet it is a magic system. And it's I believe they call themselves arcanists overall, if I'm not mistaken. Or Abinthy is his first mentor, which I forgot to mention him as a favorite character. I liked Abinthy as well. Definitely could have read some more moments with Abinthy or Ben, which I wonder where he went. If we'll even ever, I wonder if we'll ever see him again. Moving back into the magic system, sympathy was cool in that way that it did require intelligence. It also had its costs depending on what you use to fuel the binding you were doing within sympathy. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain it because I feel like I won't do it justice. So I'm going to mess it all up. But cool magic system. I'm more curious about the names though. The fact that if you know something's true name or an element's true name, the true name of anything, you hold power over it. Thus the title, right? The name of the wind, which you get to see being called, I want to say at least twice throughout the book. So really cool. That I'm definitely more interested in. But yeah, awesome magic system. Okay, so my favorite scenes. Number one, starting with the chapter of Master Eladin. So Quoth seeks out Master Eladin to learn the names of things, right? Master Eladin is the master of names. So he's the one that I'm already thinking like, oh, like he's inevitably gonna play a huge part in Quoth's life. He's probably the strongest dude at the university in terms of the magic system, or at least knowing the true names of things and holding power over it, right? So excited for this character. He's already been described as a very somewhat exotic style of character, unorthodox with his personality compared to some of the others. So I was excited for this. It did not go the way I thought it was going to go either. I think I expected him to become his new mentor, like his actual mentor at this university, versus the others that Quoth wound up working with. So I love that Master Eladin allowed Quoth 3 questions to be able to ask him. Because at first it was just like a no, just straight up nah. He said, you can ask me 3 questions, walk with me. They began walking. I forgot the name of the building they went to, but apparently it was some of his other students, or at least people who would also practice naming. And you got to see the cost of it. You got to see the cost of maybe going too far, or I guess not knowing what you're doing with it, because people were being driven mad. Some people were, they were not themselves at all, and Quoth got to see that firsthand. I love the cleverness of Quoth here, and he's clever throughout the entire book, but here the use of those 3 questions were pretty solid. And the scene where he gets to go with Master Eladin into his room, his old room, and he speaks the name of the wall. He even mentioned that they must have changed the name, or someone changed the name, which was interesting, but he spoke whatever he said, and then boom, it like fell like grains of sand. That was just the coolest moment for me when it comes to the use of magic, up to that point, of course, which was definitely like halfway through the book. I want to say that marked like the halfway point of the book. Them going out into the balcony up to the point where he basically tells quotes like, what do I have to do to learn from you and to learn, naming, and he says, jump off. And quoth like recites a quote from a book, a famous book, I guess, in the world that he's read, and it talks about how this character in this book called the name of the wind to save him from a fall, or save him from falling. So it builds it up to where, oh, like he's gonna jump and maybe something cool will happen, and this is the beginning of quote learning like some powerful stuff. He falls and flat on the ground and like breaks his. I mean, what's interesting is it did mention that he saw the wave of Master Eladin's hand. Did he play any role of helping Quoth like survive that fall? I don't know. But Quoth broke ribs, broke stuff. He was broken and bleeding, and I'm surprised he was conscious. But the line that Master Eladin called out or quoted after that was just so hilarious. That was definitely the first moment I was laughing out loud at my job, reading this book at my desk. It was funny. He's just like, that was the most stupidest thing I've ever seen. Like, congratulations. Like, it was great. What a great moment. That was my favorite scene in the entire book. Of course, I think many other readers' favorite scene is going to be the Aeolian performance, which is like, it's like a tavern slash inn slash bar, I guess, that you can go into and pay to perform. And if you earn these like silver pipes, you can play there for free instead of having to pay. But you may also, if you perform well enough, get a patron who's willing to pay you to play and things like that, and just give you money because they're a fan of you. And so Quoth definitely earned like these pipes. Also made big money that night that he performed and just in that chapter. And it was really good. What the most impressive thing is the fact that it's a musical performance, him playing a lute, and even through adversity, because his antagonist, university antagonist, was there, made him, one of the strings broke on the lute while he was performing, and Quoth did his thing. He still did his thing, of course, but to let music out that way, like I was there, I was there in the Aeolian, I was watching Quoth, is how it felt. And it was just a beautiful scene, a great chapter as well. It's close to being my favorite, but I don't know, nothing tops that for me with Master Eladin. And I'm someone who really I really appreciate magic too, so I was just really excited to see something cool with it, and that was the moment it showed that. But I didn't expect that was probably one of the first big moments that I expected something to go one way and it went another way. and that way that it went brought out a laugh. So yeah, so the music scene was great. Going into my next favorite scene would be when him and Ambrose were facing judgment so Ambrose is his antagonist at the university or whatever, and he wound up making it very difficult for Quoth to get hired to play music at other inns or taverns, making it difficult for him to pay money, which is really a struggle that Quoth goes throughout the entire book, is with money. So it was a big deal that Ambrose did that to him. So Quoth writes a song called Jackass Jackass, and this song is just making fun of Ambrose, and he's playing it everywhere and getting people to sing along to it and everything. Gets it spread throughout the university, and Ambrose, snitches on him. And the master's reactions to this song was hilarious. I wish I should have marked it in the book, but one of the masters, what they said is, do you see yourself as a whatever the lyric was? It was hilarious. And Ambrose was like, no, but and then Master Eladin and all the others trying to hold back their smiles and their laughs, and it was just I liked that scene as well. It was very funny. My last favorite scene would be the Dracus scene, or the Dracus scene, which is really the climax of the book. You get to see a giant lizard, which it's one of my favorites because it was the moment that Quoth did the coolest thing he did with the magic system. Up until that point, I don't, he did something cool. He was almost murdered, or two thugs, I guess, were hired by Ambrose to put a scare into him. He wound up getting cut kind of bad. Not like super bad, but he got cut enough to draw blood by these guys, and he did something pretty cool there. He was in a situation where he either, like, he had to do something. So he had to do something to escape, and he used what he had, and it wound up causing flame and blinding one of them or something like that. So that was cool, but nothing like this. Nothing like what Quoth did. He's jumping from rooftop to rooftop to save a town. We fast forward like big time in this part where the giant lizard Komodo dragon thing is just messing up this town, and Quoth is jumping from rooftop to rooftop. He uses sympathy to douse out the fire and prevent it from causing further destruction, and then he causes a giant iron bell swing down from a church, or not swing down, but come down from a church building into the dragon, or the Dracus, to kill it. It was the coolest thing that we had saw thus far, and that was really towards the end of the book. So like I said, it was the climax, and it was the coolest thing we saw him do. So that was my last but not least favorite scene. Going into the foreshadowing and the overall plot of this book, I did like it. It created for a lot of mystery. Chandrian is the main antagonist of the entire story, the overarching thing, and they're like these demon godlike people who they murdered his entire family. They murdered his troop. It was pretty devastating, the aftermath of that, but that's where they're introduced in the story, which also leads to quote young Quoth's journey of survival from that moment, returning from getting firewood. And this is young Quoth, this is before the university, this is before, this is right after learning the basics of sympathy, but not enough to really do much with it. He hadn't been to the university or anything yet. So he returns from getting firewood, traveling with his family of entertainers, and they're all dead, slaughtered. And then he meets these Chandrian, and they let him live. He winds up having to survive from that point on. He faces many adversities in Tarbion, which is a big city. He's poor, he's homeless, he's running barefoot around. That was probably my favorite part of the book, honestly. I know I mentioned my favorite scenes, but as far as my favorite arcs, my favorite arc overall is going to be that point up to where he gets to the university. Yeah, it was really good. But the mystery around the Chandrian is very interesting. I kept wanting to know more about them, trying to see the little hints and stuff of foreshadowing with them. The origin story he gets in Tarbion about the Chandrian was interesting as well. So is the urn that I guess they were searching for, or the artifact that they murdered these people at a wedding to obtain. I don't know. I wonder what that is. It wasn't revealed in the book, but there's a lot of theories and things out there that I haven't dabbled in just yet, but I plan to check out some videos, possibly. So the foreshadowing in this book is immense. There are a lot of lines and just droppings of certain things and throughout the entire book that can easily go over your head. And this is why I would say, if you're a rereader, this is definitely one that you'll want to reread, or go back and look, or try to find, remind yourself of these arcs and these plots if you want to write them down or whatnot. I'm not much of a rereader. There's just too many books. I have too many on my to-be read list as it is. So, but I remember some, I remember in the beginning, a traveler mentioning, I remember where you killed him. He recognized Quoth, right? Because Quoth is pretending he's in present day an owner of an inn, and he's pretending to be someone else, just your normal average innkeeper. I think he calls himself Coat. So he's obviously hiding his true identity, and he winds up telling the story, the true story of himself. Well, he winds up telling his version of the story of himself to a book writer, chronicler who seeked him out and heard rumors of his existence and whatnot. But a traveler recognizes him as Quoth, and he says lines that mention, I saw where you killed him. There was like a statue or a fountain there. I don't know, he said some things about this, but that's just one example of what I'm talking about. And that's so early in the book. That's so early that he mentions this. And I'm thinking, killed who, King Killer Chronicles, I don't know. But the whole thing about the sword that's hung, that hangs up in the inn as well. There's a lot of things. Like, it would take me a while to like try to figure them all out or think of all of them. Those are the main two that pop up in my head right now. But yeah, foreshadowing and plot are something I did enjoy about this book overall. I'll say the mystery of the plot is really what I enjoyed the most. Like Denna's patron, her mystery patron, the Master Ash is what Quoth calls him. Like, who is this guy, right? He's obviously not a normal dude. You get that right off the bat as she's saying, Quoth's even like, he sounds like a spy, right? The way his behavior towards Denna, his treatment of Denna, and just pulling her aside from the wedding where it's just them two in privacy, asking like how many people were there and things like this. So something's going on with him. My inner detective's like, And then also the fact that it's older version of Quoth, or present day Quoth, adult Quoth, telling his story of him, of all these rumors and things like that. And that in itself is also interesting and something I enjoyed, because it goes into like the overall message that I believe the book to be, or one of the overall messages anyway, which I'll touch on in the final verdict. But now to go into the things that I didn't like. Not only that I did not like, but just feel mixed on overall. Alright, so this is where I'm going to try my best to keep my emotions contained, because this book has definitely caused its share of frustrations for me. And I'll say that, let's just start with characters, right? Let's go back to characters. So let's talk about Quoth as a protagonist. So, strong voice. I enjoyed the voice. Rothfuss's writing is amazing. I didn't say that in any part of this review yet, because I feel like that's something that's hardcore praise on this book every time, is the writing, the prose. And it's great. It is beautiful. There's lines that are poetic, and it's great writing. And it does carry through. It makes for an easy read. And when it comes to Quoth as a main character, what I feel mixed about him is that it feels like the stakes, so number one, it feels like the stakes are never high enough for him. And it's not that, there are definitely my moments I had where I rooted for Quoth. I was sitting there rooting for him and I felt good, fist pump moments for him, but it quickly wore off, especially after the Tarbean era, or arc, where he makes it to the university. It quickly wore off when you started to see that he just didn't have much adversity to face, or if he did have adversity to face, you just knew that he was going to overcome it somehow very quickly. And that's probably the main issue. Like, it's like seeing like top book lists and stuff from other reviewers and just other booktubers. This book would get brought up sometimes, and one of the things they would mention is how good this main character is at everything. I don't think it's that he's good at everything. He is absolutely flawed. He's mainly flawed when he really wants something. I noticed that when he desires something, it's like all of a sudden his cleverness is gone. His wit is just escapes him. It's like he gets one-upped on by Ambrose easily. How irrational his decision was to take out a super large loan to hightail it to Trebon, to, when he heard the rumor of the wedding, of people being massacred and whatnot, just because he wanted to learn about the Chandrian. He was definitely searching for a way into the archives, to sneak into the archives, knowing the risk there. There's moments where it's like he's just loses that wit, and it's usually when he wants something. So when it comes to Denna, we'll talk about that here in a second. But him as a character, so again, it's not that I think he's just good at everything. I think the presentation is just not done well enough to build up to these moments where he was able to overcome the adversity that he faced. It was always just explained, like he's already doing the overcoming, and it's just explained like very quickly, like, oh, this is how I able to figure this out, or I quickly blah blah blah. You know, I cheated. I sat for an hour and watched all these other students give their answers so I can like be witty and smart and get admitted into the university. So it's just, I don't know, that's my opinion. But it did leave me feeling disconnected from him, right, emotionally, because it felt like the stakes weren't high enough in that aspect. It just felt like there were no consequences for this guy. He was just he didn't need rooting for. He didn't need rooting for. I knew he was gonna make it through whatever was going on. Plot armor heavy, which makes sense. He is the protagonist, but we're not supposed to feel that. We're not supposed to feel like there's no there's no stakes for this person. And he's obviously not strong when it comes to physicality. Obviously that's a weakness of his as well. So and you get that early on, but I can see why people say they felt like he was good at everything, or they just felt like kind of a disconnect from him in that aspect. So when it comes to Denna, so I enjoyed the romance. I did. It was I felt like it was witty. The dynamic between them, it was cute. It was, I was invested. Anytime she came onto the scene, or there was going to be like a little, moments between them or a chapter between them, I was on board for it. I don't mind romance as a romantic myself, but when we got towards the ending and I hear what Quoth says, or I read what Quoth says about her kind of within their last arc, right? They go through what they go through, which was pretty hilarious, kind of, and seeing her vulnerable side, because she wasn't in her normal state of mind, and in the whole Drakus arc. They spent that arc together. He hightails it to this wedding to figure out what's going on with the Chandrian. He winds up meeting up with Denna because she happens to be there. She's a very flighty type of girl. She's a very flaky in a way. Just hard to find. But it happened with her and him as well. Like, she was always the one most of the time finding Quoth. And whenever they made plans together, she usually was there. I don't think there was a time she wasn't there when they made a plan, but it was Quoth who wasn't showing up for, whatever reason, whatever happened to him that caused his delay. There were moments of them missing each other, playing that kind of, what we would call phone tag today, right? But, which created that longing between them. But when they went through this large arc and spent a lot of time together investigating the Chandrian, and her trying to find her mysterious patron and what happened to him, and did he die, is he alive, what's happening, right? Because she was at this wedding, and she winds up accidentally, unintentionally eating a drug. I forgot, it was like some resin or something from a tree that causes these effects. They call it, sweet teethers, or I don't know. It's a drug, and it puts you in a very euphoric state. And it was just funny to see that. But also, you saw Quoth's, gentlemanness come out during this, and it was cool. Again, I enjoyed the romance. I didn't mind it at all up until Quoth says what he says. After all this, they wind up meeting up again after time has passed from those moments, because he leaves to save that town, and Den is gone by the time he gets back. So they meet up later. And he says something along the lines of, well, let me say that Denna is also a survivor. She's described as a beautiful girl who kind of manipulates men or uses men to, I guess, pay her bills and, and protect her and let her go about and live her life. And it's described and painted in a way where she's a survivor, in a world where it does not favor women and things of that nature. So and that's why she's fighting, because to the point where before it gets to be too much, or they expect too much from her, that's when I guess she moves on, and then she'll show up later with another guy or another patron, right? That they're patrons. But she's also a performer. She also sings. She can play apparently the harp or certain instruments as well. So yeah, it's just, it's just an interesting dynamic. And when you hear Quoth say, other men will be wrapped in her arms or encircled in her arms, They'll taste her mouth and feel her warmth, something he'll never get to feel or something he's never had, but he'll always hold a piece of her that they'll never get to touch, something like this. When I read that, it just left not a good feeling. It left not a good feeling in me. And I was like, bro, no, And, I don't know. It just made me rethink the whole romance, and I think Rothfuss did that on purpose. And, I mean, it was upsetting. I think what I felt was just, red flags. It made me wonder, like, if Denna was here today in our world, like, would she be like an IG model or like OnlyFans chick or something? I'll probably have to cut that for sure. I don't think I can allow myself to say that. But oh gosh. So it really makes you kind of rethink the whole thing. Like I don't want to judge her for anything she does to survive in this world or in this book, but at the same time, I'm like, Denna has red flags, and who's telling him to chase this girl? You know what I mean? If I was his buddy, I'd be like, quote, not like, we can do better, brother. We can do better. so it's just that was the biggest thing for me. It's crazy that I really didn't feel that way about her up until he said that. I don't know. Last thing I'll say is Ambrose as kind of the main antagonist, the sub-arc antagonist of this book. I don't know. I just didn't care for him. And I would have rather had an antagonist that I did care about. Maybe there were things that could have been done or a way that it could have been written where I did care more about him. But I really it was like a little kid rivalry, you know what I mean? But like, it's like I would say like you think Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy, but even that rivalry was better. Like even it just I don't know. I had no ties to Ambrose at all. And let me backtrack there. I have not read the books of Harry Potter. Okay, like yeah, I know. But just basing off the movie or just anything I can think of that's close to what's happening, right? Because this is a university. It takes place at a university, a school. Majority of this book does anyway, and that's where the antagonist is there. And Ambrose is like this rich, I think 16th in line for the throne or something like this. Like he's high class compared to Quoth, who's like poor, has no more family because they were murdered. Like, and even then they were like entertainers. They weren't like royalty or anything. So, but I don't know what it was. I didn't care. I gave no F's about Ambrose or anything that was going on between them. And I even questioned like if it was Ambrose who hired those two men to supposedly murder or scare him. I mean, we didn't get to see proof of that. We only got to see Quoth speculate that. And that's just one of the many things I'm talking about when it comes to the foreshadowing in this book. Like, we don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. But that's okay. So this next thing is probably my biggest problem with this book. The overall biggest quibble that I can come up with is the promise. The promises that this book makes. I felt lied to, right? You read the back of the book, you read the blurb or whatever it is, and the name of the wind, and even looking at the cover, to reading one of the first earlier scenes where, Quoth rescues Chronicler, who again is the writer who winds up writing his story. He's seeking Quoth out to hear him tell his tale. He rescues him by beating down like demon spiders, giant demon spiders, with like an iron bar. And it's like, okay, like we're in for an epic tale here, right? No, man, we're not. So he gets to the bar, or they get to the inn. I keep saying bar. They get to the inn, and he starts to tell his story and everything. He's like, what does it say? I'm gonna read it. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me, you know? And it's like, my name is Quoth. So, I don't know. When I hear that, and then it comes on, it says, I guess right here where it says, his one man search for meaning in his universe, and how that search and the indomitable will that drove it gave birth to a legend. But even that word legend, it really felt like it didn't give me what I was expecting, which what it gave me wasn't bad, but it wasn't what I was promised. And I think that played a big role in the disappointment. I mean, if we go through life, look at you go through life and you expect certain things to happen, and that things doesn't happen, you're disappointed, right? So that does happen, and that definitely happened with this book. So that's my biggest problem with it. When it comes to the plot and everything, because of that promise, it hurt the plot as well, because it felt like it wasn't. I don't mind a slow-paced book, and this book is definitely slow-paced, and that's okay. But with that promise, I'm like, at some point, I want to see some plot movement. I want to see some cool magic. I want to see some swords. You know what I'm saying? Where's the swords? Put the loot away, quote. Put the loot away. And I'm just like, where are the weapons? But, and with a name like Kingkiller Chronicles, maybe it's my fault, but yeah, my biggest quibble. And a lot of the sub arcs felt like they didn't really tie too close into the main arc at all. At least not just reading the first book, you don't get that. So who knows if they will, but if any of them I can think of, they really didn't. And even meeting Denna to investigate the wedding massacre, right? And that whole thing playing out. So they wind up investigating. I think they interview somebody. Oh, they meet this farmer guy with a bunch of boars and pigs that he's letting graze and feed and stuff in the woods, and where they're where there's a stream. This guy's accent was so cool and entertaining to read. It was fun to read that part out loud. But he mentioned sightings of blue fire. I want to say it was him who mentioned sightings of blue fire towards the northern bluffs. And it's known that no one goes that way. No one goes to the north, right? And there's a reason and things like this. And blue fire is one of the signatures of the Chandrian. So I'm getting lit. I'm like, time to get lit. He's like, we're gonna get some plot movement. We're gonna see let's see what happens. I'm getting excited. So they go to investigate this, and they're seeing the spouts of blue fire every once in a while, and I'm just waiting for something to happen, right? I'm waiting for how this is gonna play out, especially since I'm like, I always think it's gonna play out one way and it plays out another way. Well, it definitely did that. It played out another way, but what it turned out to be, spouting this blue fire, was the giant lizard, the Dracus. And I'm like, there was no mention of the whole reason why Quoth knew. So this Dracus doesn't eat humans and stuff, and Quoth knew all about this Dracus and this giant lizard because he read a book about it from the archives, I believe. That chronicler actually wrote. I don't remember there being any foreshadowing or mentioning of them being able to breathe blue fire, or him spouting blue fire. It could have been because of that lizard was on drugs too. It was eating those trees that had the resin or whatever that Denna had ate. But it's it's just disappointing. I was just disappointed. It's like, man, they're not supposed to breathe blue fire. Where are the Chandrian? Is there one that there's a Chandrian in its belly? No, I don't know. I was pretty disappointed. So how I mentioned that the Dracus scene ultimately was kind of one of my favorite scenes. Like I said, it was the climax of the book. So it was probably the most coolest, biggest action thing that we got, that Quoth did, that the main character did. And that's kind of, so that leads me into saying that I feel like there could have been more opportunities or just more moments of them showing that magic system, especially when they told you of Salitos, I believe his name was. Salitos! Yeah, so Back in Tarbine, there was a storyteller in one of the inns, or one of the taverns, that told stories to the kids and stuff, and the kids would show up or whatever. So Quoth showed up, and he asked for a story on the Chandrian. And this is where we get the origins of the Chandrian and the characters Solitos. I keep wanting to say it that way. And Lanre, or Lanier. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing any of these wrong. But Lanre winds up being Halix, which I'm pretty sure, like, we all know this is the leader of the Chandrian now. He winds up being cursed by Solitos, who Solitos is supposedly like this all-powerful, well, I think he's called a seer, an all-powerful seer. But I'm still expecting more from this moment, right? Especially when these are like, this is history, and this is, he's overlooking from a tall tower overlooking his kingdom and stuff. There's war and stuff going on, and Lanre's wife dies after she brings him back to life. Which kind of leads towards, I think, the downfall of Lanre, and him kind of betraying Solitos. The point of that is, I felt like that was a perfect moment to show some really cool stuff from guys who would have known or maybe been more skilled at the magic system, which Lanre did subdue Solitos, or paralyze him, or whatever he did, but they just had a conversation, I wish there was some cool action there. And then it took a long time before we got some more cool action. It was more like clever use of sympathy from Quoth, but little things. Even the duel scene between students in this school was no like cool duel scene. Like, it was like, who can light the other's candle first? Like, lighting a candle, bro. But like, and then that's why Master Eladin winds up like saving magic for me in a way, because he shows up and like just turns a wall into sand, like, and there's just cool vibes and aura around Master Eladin. Later on, Quoth winds up unintentionally calling the name of the wind as well. But again, that's like even more towards the end. That's after the Dracus scene. So again, just feel like there were too far and few in between moments that showed the use of the magic system, whether it be the sympathy or names. Cool use of the magic system. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is the ending. The ending of the Name of the Wind. It felt unsatisfying. It made me think really hard. I actually thought too hard. So one of the guardsmen that winds up robbing Chronicler in the beginning, which is actually a fun scene as well, of him getting robbed. But anyways, that same guy shows up to the inn in present day and winds up just causing chaos. He killed a dude in there. It took like 3 or 4 guys to take him down, to take him out, right? He was obviously possessed by something, which does cause more mystery as well. Like, what's going on there? But he, Quoth throws a bottle at him and mutters something. And we're thinking, like, Quoth knows magic. Like, why, what's Quoth doing? You know what I mean? What are we doing? Yeah, nothing happens. So then we move into, like, the final chapter. And Bass sneaks into Chronicler's room at night when they're sleeping. And he winds up telling Chronicler, don't ask questions about why it didn't work. Don't ask questions about sympathy or the magic system, none of that. He told him don't ask him about something else. So I just checked. It was the music. He also told him don't ask about the music. Music, I'm not sure. But the fact that he just threw the bottle and like muttered something and nothing happened, like, I started thinking way too hard and was like, bro, what all did Quoth lie about? Because obviously it's letting us know, like, he's telling us his version of this story. And there's even a dialogue kind of in the beginning of the book, or at some point, one of the interludes or whatever, and he's telling Chronicler the best rumors or lies that have been told about Quoth are the lies that he's told about himself. And it just, but I think I just was thinking too hard, but I was going nuts, y'all. Like, I was like thinking, like, is sympathy real? Like, what? It's just crazy. Like, but no, I think it was just more about Quoth now believing that he's just an innkeeper. And part of sympathy is the Alar, right? You have to have full faith. That, Abinthy taught him that. It's like part of the basics. You have to full on believe in what you're doing, like 100%. So like a knowing beyond knowing kind of thing. Makes me think of the Matrix. But this scene at the end, them ending it that way, it was cool because I like the overall message, like I said, of just kind of like the overall message of the book with that ending, I would say, is we believe the stories we make up about ourselves in our mind. That's, that's fun to ponder on, right? What we tell ourselves about ourselves, how we think about ourselves, like that really matters more than what other people think about us. I would say for sure, and I think we know this to an extent, but it doesn't mean we don't doubt ourselves or think, negative things about ourselves at times, or maybe on the flip side of that, maybe we think of ourselves too highly and it causes a weakness to show, or just an ugly side of us to show that we don't intend to, right? That we don't, you get what I'm saying. So I love that message. However, I believe because, again, we go back to the promise, and again we go back to the plot movement and all this, this 250, I want to say it's like 250K. 200K plus word book. It's a little thick boy that I sat through and read to the end to not really get any of my questions answered. It hurt, but knowing there's a sequel is makes it okay, I guess. Forgivable up to a point. But we'll go into our overall verdict of the book. So do I like this book? Will I read the sequel? What do you think? Do you think I like this book? I do like this book. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't have finished it. I would not force myself to sit through a book, especially this long, if I didn't enjoy it. So I can't sit here and say that I did not enjoy the book overall. I would be lying. Because, and maybe it was the fact that I kept wanting more, I kept hoping for more, or the mystery and the seeds being planted just made me want to search for answers, right? Or maybe it was the beautiful prose that carried me through it all, or just witnessing these characters, or the whimsical vibes that I felt from these characters and the events that were happening and things like that. I couldn't say for sure what it was that kept me going, to be honest with you. It's hard to put into words. I think the best way to describe it is, what I liked most about this book is the number of feelings it gave me. All of it. Even the conflicting feelings. I think the conflicting feelings are really what made me want to do this review, are really what made me want to talk about this book, and just really go in depth on it, or at least kind of sum up my thoughts on it and how I felt about it. It was very beautiful at times. It was fun at times. It was, gave me things to think about and try to, mystery to try to resolve in my mind and try to foreshadow and play out like what I think will happen next, and, blah, blah, blah. And it was equally frustrating and very just like, what's going on? Like, when are we going to get this? And that was it. Like, that's what happened. And, or moments of like, okay, like we get it. Like, we get that he's smart. You know what I'm saying? We get that he's clever. We get that he's going to be admitted into the university. Like, just let him in. I just, they're asking him all these questions and he's giving all these answers, and it's just information that is unnecessary. And there's parts of the book too that I feel like are unnecessarily complex. But regardless of any negatives I have, I finished this book and I enjoyed it, and I do want to read the second one. I want to see what's going to happen. Now, I got these books before I even knew that the third one has not been released yet, or even given a release date. And I won't get into all that. But I still would say it's worth a read. I would recommend this book overall, with caveats. I would say if you enjoy a slow-paced book, a slow-paced story, and you like immersive world building, you want to get lost in a fantasy world and explore, I would tell you to go in with an open mind, and I believe you can find this book enjoyable as well. If the author planned this whole conflicting feelings thing, or to give you contradictions or anything like this, genius. Absolute genius. If that's what he was going for intentionally, I mean, wow. And hopefully we get the book 3, you know what I mean? I haven't even read book 2 yet. I know there's like 2 novellas out as well that I plan to read. But hopefully by the time I'm done with everything, we'll have a release date for number 3. But I'm not gonna hold my breath. But yeah, the lightheartedness and the curiosity it invoked in me and everything, I do appreciate it. And it's crazy to think that this is my first like big adult fantasy book. This is probably like the biggest, longest book I've ever read, to be honest. I can't recall a thicker book. I mean, I've read long books, but over a long span of time. And again, we're talking non-fiction, so it was kind of more just like of a just here and there as I wanted to read something or wanted to learn something or know something that, you know, not many people I know would read. I would delve into that. But this is the first of many. I'm super excited to continue to read into this genre. I am thoroughly enjoying The Blade itself right now, like big time. And guess what? It's keeping its promise so far. The first Law trilogy, I think, is going to be one of my favorites. We'll see how it goes. I'm about a quarter way through the first book now. I'm about halfway through Jane Eyre. So yeah, I plan to keep reading those 2 until they're done, and then we'll see what I dive into next. So that wraps up my review. Spoilers, in-depth discussion review of The Name of the Wind. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you have other points that maybe I missed, or maybe I got some events wrong or something you'd like to discuss with me, feel free to comment down below. I'll be happy to converse with you about this book. Or like if there's anything you know I should like keep my eyes peeled for, with all the seeds that were planted in this one for when I read book 2, please let me know. I would love to know like what I have to look forward to in that one as well, without spoilers, please. So yeah, so thank you as always for being here, for watching this video. If you sat through it all, I greatly appreciate it. I'll definitely be putting out more reviews as I get finished with books. I'm not like a super fast reader. I don't know if I'm a slow reader, but I definitely try to put away at least 1 to 2 chapters a day of whatever books I'm reading. I do my best. My next video will probably be about my writing process, kind of more of a vlog style video, so stay tuned for that. I appreciate you again. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth review of The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I wish you the best. You have a great rest of your day.